Financial strain has hit the micro-blogging startup KOO, and the company has paused salary payments amidst talks among partners with a 197 crore rupee loss in FY22. Doubts are growing, and the co-founder of the company, Mayank Bidawatka, has said that they are in discussions now for strategic partnerships with personal funds covering salaries of the past. Post-partnership, the salaries will resume with fresh capital infusion is what we're hearing. Recent setbacks, though, when you look at the startup universe, include names like Paytm and Byju. Clearly, it raises questions. Why are Indian startups faltering? Let's delve into the reasons behind the kind of struggles that Indian startups are facing. And to do that, Vinit Goenka is joining us. He's a political analyst, along with founder and economist from Nikore Associates, Mitali Nikore, joining us this evening on Business at 9 as well. Great to have you both with us. But let me begin by asking you, Mitali, from a pure economics perspective, for the stage of development that the Indian economy now sits at, how does the failure of startups like the ones that we are talking about, like KOO, today, we've spoken about Paytm in the past, it's not a failure, but yes, there have been regulatory concerns, and that has affected how the startup functions. We've seen the mountain of troubles at Byju's as well. How does all of this reflect on the state of our startup economy and the kind of contribution it makes to our projected GDP growth now and in the future?
So, hi Vikram, it's always a pleasure to join the show. So, I think firstly, I'd like to say I'm a startup founder myself. The work that we are doing at our think tank, we are less than 5 years old. So, we're also a startup. And I think what is very, very important to sort of realize is that the vibrancy of India's startup ecosystem is not defined by one, two, or even three, I would say even 10, startups failing. I think it's a really good sign that startups should succeed and fail because in capitalism, this is what we call as creative waves of destruction. Because if a startup is not doing well, it's helping other startups and other entrepreneurs test the market and say that what, maybe this idea didn't work and we need to pivot to something else, and someone else will come and start something, some other organization, some other enterprise seeing a gap in the market. So I don't think that one company failing or one company not making it is a problem. What is a problem, however, for our startup ecosystem is the regulatory compliance culture. At the end of the day, it is very important for startups to be as regulatory compliant as a large organization. And we definitely need more help in doing that because, not everyone in a startup or even a startup founder may be that well aware of how to, comply with a lot of regulatory, requirements that are there. And I think that's where the government can really step in and support startups.
So on that front, I want to bring in Vinit Goenka, who is a political analyst. Vinit Goenka, KOO, today that we're talking about as a company which is facing troubles. This company was positioned against Twitter as an Atmanirbhar social media app. It won the government's Atmanirbhar Bharat app challenge in the year 2020. And that's a great start for any startup. Plus, of course, when you look at the overall picture, there is this great push from the government side with Startup India as well. And yet we are talking about Indian startups seemingly failing despite a supportive base from the center. The question is why?
Vikram, thank you for inviting me on your show. I think there are a couple of things which have to be discussed before we see this in totality. When I talk about failures of this kind of startups, visibility versus reality, the statistics which they present versus stability, employee welfare versus the money which they spend on acquisition, talent acquisition, and the real market access to burning, to build, kill to capture, that approach which these startups have. I've seen that burning of their capital to acquire clients, customers, or to have talent acquisition without thinking about the after effects is one of the reasons that they burn up their cash, their capital, and then they land up into this kind of situation. A. B, many times we blow them up. We create a halo effect around those founders, and then they start getting awards. They start speaking in forums, and then they think they are beyond the market forces. So as rightly said by my previous speaker, the governance model of that corporate is a problem. Two, lack of experience. And three is the PPT versus PPT. So when I say PPT versus PPT, one PPT is purely the PowerPoint presentation which you give to your investors, give it to your client acquisition team, versus the people process technology implemented in your organization thoughtfully. So I think they rely more on the PPT to do PowerPoint presentation rather than relying on the people process technology thoughts in their organization, and then they create this kind of problem. So if you see KOO or any other Byju or any other organization which has failed, one is the corporate mechanism which is there, and two is their reckless burning of the cash to acquire clients or talent. That I think is something which is going against us. So this comet effect, where you see the star larger than its original size, those of the moment that energy of the cash is down.
Speaking of cash, and Mitali Nikore, again, from an economics perspective, to sound economics suggests that any business should not burn that much cash. We're talking about a funding winter right now, and that's where there is no cash to burn, and that's why the startups seem to be failing. How would you understand this phenomenon, and how does it compare with other kind of ecosystems where the startups are doing much better business?
So I think, Vinit, we have to sort of like just divide this a little bit. There are many startups which are, emerging from more traditional sectors, and which are emerging, with say women founders or founders who are in the MSME space, and they are expanding their companies. They are traditional business, which is, doing say furniture sales, now suddenly expanding into, okay, let's also provide lighting, or let's also provide carpets, so you're seeing those kind of startups coming in as well. And those are completely different from the tech fueled startups which are attracting a lot of capital from venture capitalists. So this entire story that we're telling of the cash being burned, etc., comes from only one small segment of startups which is cornering a lot of VC money. On the other hand, you have a lot of very small startups, like for example, which are led in the traditional industries, and those are actually doing quite well, and those are in the beating heart of India because they are based in tier 2, tier 3 cities, and they, the way our parents started some of those businesses in that generation, and those businesses are very strong. They have very strong fundamentals. A lot of these startups also have very strong fundamentals. So I just want to put that narrative out there as well, that it's not only the startups that are burning cash. There are many vibrant startups across the country that are doing very well. But the problem is that these startups are very disconnected from the funding ecosystem. The funding ecosystem is often attracted by, okay, is there a technology product or not? Or is there a, what is your customer acquisition strategy? How are you going to do that without technology?
Yes.
So, these narratives are not bridging. We need them to bridge, and we need investors to also open up their eyes and see, let's start investing in real India startups, not just the startups which are tech focused, but the ones which really
That
are
point is well
rooted in
taken.
the Indian
Vinit
market.
Goenka, what do you think about this? In terms of our tech startups, do you think there is an imbalance in the kind of spotlight that they are put in, the kind of investments that they are able to draw? Because it seems like a majority of them, even if you look at the employment picture, we do talk about the IT firms and how much lure these companies have compared to many others. Even when you talk about hiring on our campuses and some of the premier institutions, that's where we are seeing a slowdown as well. So in terms of their ability to be able to draw investments, drawing the best talent, is it the tech startups that find themselves in a spot of bother, according to you?
See, talent acquisition is always been a discussion point, and what is the balance? I really don't know. I can't guide anybody on that. But one particular part is that what is the cost of talent acquisition has to be discussed by the board, and they should be realistic. Number one. Number two, as the technology will cannibalize the earlier technology, the need of the man will be reduced. So we'll have to understand in coming years, we will find lesser need of human beings because this will be replaced by better technology, which will have less hands requirement. But if you see, this is not an end. India has been a very good success story. If you see the entire story of the last 7-8 years, I think we have more than 112,000 startups which are successfully running, registered running. penetration of internet, or whether the affordable access of data, whether the spread of smartphones, or maybe the culture of coming online by even those who were not educated and thought that they will never come, has helped people to grow their system. But your product has to be real product. And maybe one thing which went wrong with KOO or Byju's would be they had their boom in the COVID period when people were at home, forced to sit at home. So they were naturally spending more time on internet at home. And as the market opened, as people started going out, their time on the internet would have spent. So I'm giving one benefit of doubt to them. But primarily, if you see, the reason of failure is the board's ability to understand the business, inexperience, bad corporate culture, and many times there are financial mismanagement or opaque transactions, which may be there. I don't know whether this happened in these 2-3 companies, but there is, of course, a ray of hope. If you see, funding in India has increased 15 times in the last 7-8 years in this kind of tech startups. The investors, number of investors, individual investors or institutional investors, have gone up by 9 times. And incubators has, of course, grown beyond 6 times in India. So it is a good environment. Yes, few will fail. They will make headlines. The more success or the mediocre success will never be discussed. And one more thing is this, people are becoming smart. How much time to spend on smartphones, how much money to spend is a consideration which people are doing. So probably this is there. If you permit me, I will take a liberty to say government should think about regulatory mechanism. There should be discussion whether there should be a self-regulation, whether there should be some kind of governance been put around so that the money of investors is secure too. Employment of the employees also secure. And third, these people, they disrupt the market. Now, you have not asked me the question, but let me take liberty of using word of Byju. They disrupted the market. Because of them, many classes, many coaching classes, many tuition classes closed down. Professors, teachers working in the traditional, conventional coaching classes joined them.
Correct.
Now, those professors have not job. Students don't have good coaching classes in the neighborhood. So, they have disrupted, and they have killed the entire ecosystem. And as a country, we will lose because the students will not get.
So you're saying that we need better regulation as well from the government side. That entire push towards startups needs to ensure as well that there are regulatory checks and balances, and perhaps not having that is putting us in the place that we are, where we are seeing some of our more celebrated startups not doing well after that initial kind of glitz that they were launched with. Of course, we hope there aren't many more cases like this, but we are watching that space very closely. Thanks for lending your perspective on the subject, Mitali Nikore and Vinit Goenka. It's a pleasure having you with us on Business at 9.
Thank you. Good day.
There's new.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.